Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. La yattakhidhil mu'minuna al-kafirina awliya'a min dunil mu'minin. Wa man yaf'al dhalika falaysa min Allahi fi shay'in illa an tattaqu minhum tuqah wa yuhadhdhirukum Allahu nafsahu wa ila Allahil masir. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin ya Rabbil Alameen. Once again, everybody, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've gone through the third section of this surah, the third small section of the surah, and that is ayat number 28 to 32. And I wanted to give you kind of a structural view of these ayat and how the subject matter has been compiled before we move on to the next section. And so I'm going to lay that out for you. Sometimes when I do this kind of analysis, the delineation, the way the subjects are divided aren't necessarily by ayah numbers. Sometimes part of an ayah corresponds to something and the rest of the ayah corresponds to something else. So it's more complicated than just an ayah ends here and an ayah starts there. I've also noticed in Quran sometimes in one section there may be one ayah that Allah Azza wa Jal describes something, and then later on He elaborates it with an entire passage. So it's like a seed and then a blooming flower, kind of. That's the image that I've often referred to. In any case, the first thing here, I'll place ayah 28 here. And in ayah 28, لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين, we learned about how Allah teaches us that, believers won't be taking disbelievers as awliya. We discussed that concept. And with the exception of emergency case, life and death situations, إلا أن تتقوا منهم تقاه ويحذركم الله نفسه. There are lots of parallels between that and what happens in the 31st and the 32nd ayah of the same surah. So ayahs 31 and 32, which are at the bottom of this section, there are a number of parallels between these two. And I'll just say some of them off to you, and then we'll write some things in brief. So for instance, this section begins with, the first phrase has the word kafirin in it. لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين. And by the time you get to the end, قل أطيعوا الله والرسول فإن تولوا فإن الله لا يحب al-kafirin. So even the recurrence of the phrase is kind of telling you open parentheses and close parentheses. You've got the idea of loyalty taught through the word wilaya. Wilaya includes, the concept of taking awliya means someone you take for protection, closeness, friendship, those who have the most right over you, rightfulness. Those are the notions that lead to basically where your loyalty should fall. By the time you get to the end, these two ayat, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ قُلْ أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ. There are two notions that define loyalty: love and obedience, love and allegiance. Those two things are what define loyalty. So it's actually the beginning and the end are both dealing with the matter of loyalty, but they're highlighting two different dimensions of it. One is actually don't take them as awliya, and the other is highlighting, why would someone take another as a wali anyway? That would have to stem from love. It's actually a relationship of love. And so the root origin of it is mentioned in the bottom ayat in لا يتخذ المؤمن or قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فإن الله لا يحب الكافرين. It's also a contrast, because in the opening ayat, why would somebody run to the disbelievers of Quraysh, and secretly try to seek protection from them? If things go south, no, we're with you, that kind of thing, because they're trying to get away from danger. And on the flip side, out of love of Allah's Messenger, when He tells you to follow Him, you run right into the mouth of danger. In other words, what's asked of you out of love is actually that you don't care about protecting yourself, because you have Allah's protection, that's good enough for you. Right? So those two contrasting notions had been placed one against the other. And of course, keep your loyalties away from the enemies of the Prophet. But if you don't, then Allah considers you. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْكَافِرِينَ. It's a subtle thing. In the first group of ayat, here Allah mentions stay away from al-kafirin. Basically, right? But in the latter group, basically Allah said, if you turn away from obeying Allah and His Messenger, then you're going to be considered among them. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْكَافِرِينَ. Like, that ayah was about us, right? قُلْ أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ. Second person. And if you turn your backs, Allah doesn't love kafirin. Why would it switch to al-kafirin? Well, it's a subtle way of saying, if you turn your backs, you're going to be considered among al-kafirin, the people that you're running towards in loyalty, well, there's other ways to even be worse. You'll be considered among them if you don't show your allegiance to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's another interesting dimension of love that's highlighted here. You know, when someone says, I don't love you anymore, I want nothing to do with you. I want nothing to do with you. You know, the phrase literally, I have nothing to do with you is فَلَيْسَ مِنَ اللَّهِ فِي شَيْءٍ. لَيْسَ مِنَ اللَّهِ, Allah has nothing to do with them. They have nothing from Allah anymore. And literally, when does someone say that? Because when there's no love left, there's no connection left. And that is expounded upon in the phrase, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah does not love those who do kufr. So the first and the last parallel, I think the most important parallel, here we have a loyalty to believers as opposed to the enemy. Right? And here you have love for Allah. So it's actually, you can put it as loyalty to believers. And here you can place it as loyalty to Allah and Messenger. And Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that's a really powerful thing, because this is rooted in this. There's no reason for someone to have loyalty to the believers, have wilayah of believers, unless this overwhelming love for Allah and loyalty to the Messenger is there. So they're both, coupling each other and completing each other. You found at the end of 28, this is still ayah 28, وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ. Allah warns you of Himself. The phrase, وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ. And then He ended it, وَإِلَى اللَّهِ الْمَصِيرِ. And to Allah alone is the final return. And you find in ayah number 30 actually, at the end of ayah 30. This is not the whole of ayah 30, it's just the end of ayah 30. وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ. وَاللَّهُ رَؤُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. Notice the phrase has been mirrored. It occurred at the bottom, it occurred at the top. And this phrase is telling you that these two ayat, these two subject matters are linked. The first time it came up was in terms of loyalty, which was a current problem. It's a dunya problem. Allah doesn't want you to do this, and He's warning you, you better not be doing this. Then He started talking in the middle, what I haven't written out yet, is He started talking about the afterlife. He started talking about you're going to find all of your deeds. And then He says, I'm warning you of myself again. So there's two dimensions of warning. There's warning, you better not be doing this right now. Forget about the future, don't do this. يُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ. And in light of what's coming in the future, don't do this. There's two dimensions of tahdhir that are highlighted here and here. But more beautifully, here, to Allah alone is the return. Allah is warning you, and to Allah is the return. All of that sounds like a threat, yes? Because if He's warning you and you're going to come back to Him, then you better watch out, because when you come back to Him, the idea is you're going to be in trouble. But here, He's warning you of Himself, and He's going to be kind and compassionate and empathetic to servants. So it started off with a warning, as I emphasized yesterday, and it didn't end with a warning. These two coupled together are teaching us a powerful lesson. Everybody should be scared of this warning, but if you want to be the exception, you want to be here. Wallahu ra'ufun bil ibad. So Allah is warning you, and the only ones that won't be in trouble are al-ibad. In a subtle way, we're being told, if your wilayah is in the wrong place, you're not ibad. That's basically what we're being told. If your wilayah is not in the wrong place, you won't be considered ibad, you won't get the ra'fa of Allah, the mercy and the consideration of Allah. Then finally, the middle. And that's ayahs 28, or 29 rather, and again 30. So these two are connected. And here Allah says, basically nothing is secret. And here he says, nothing is hidden from you. On Judgment Day, you'll see everything. He knows everything, so will you. So, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي قُلْ إِن تُخْفُوا مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ أَوْ تُبْدُوهُ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. So the primary theme is knowledge of Allah, and the knowledge you will eventually have, and you'll regret it by that time. So you better be in awe of Allah's knowledge and not be heedless towards it. But then the one more subtle thing is here Allah said, and I'm not adding that here, but it's a subtle parallel between these two ayat. Here Allah said Allah is in complete control over everything. Allah has power over everything. He says, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. And here He highlights our powerlessness to distance ourselves from our sin. You're not in control of separating yourself from the mistakes you've made. You can only wish you could. تَوَدُّ لَوْ أَنَّ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَهُ أَمَدًا بَعِيدًا. Okay, so there's that parallel between these two also. So Allah's knowledge and His power, and our knowledge and our powerlessness on Judgment Day. They're paralleled. They're contrasted against one another.